The microphone does work. I will be here shortly. Hello. I have decided I will give streaming on Twitch another go, and I feel maybe playing some Game & Watch games and other electronics is a good way to start off with that. Yeah, the Game & Watch games are, well, they were popular because they're simple, but they're addictive. They're a real test of sort of hand-eye coordination too, which is not good for me playing them, but I can really see the appeal of them, especially when there weren't really any other handheld systems at the time, but even when there are, they hold up really, really well. The one I've got up now is Lion, which was released shortly before I was born. This was an end of April 81 game, and I was born in May 81, so a couple of days before I was born, maybe a week before I was born, this hit the market. And it's you can tell from the display on the screen that it uses two sets of up and down controls, one for each of the line keepers, and the idea is just to keep the lines in the cage. So when they look like they're about to escape, you move up or down to where they are. Pardon me. But yeah, in terms of a game for kids to play, these are perfect because they teach simple skills of managing things, watching what's going on. The controls are simple and obvious. They're not like the Tiger games where you really have to use your imagination to work out what's going on most of the time. And the challenge increases with time on these. And obviously you've got game A and game B options on most of them, which gives you two different difficulty levels. And there we go, even at the start of the game, I've managed to miss, as they call it here. And they are primitive, but the fact they're not using a video display, but they're using this type of artwork means they still hold up in terms of visuals really well. Because you're not restricted to low resolution images with pixels. This was all sort of hand-drawn art. Just the way it works is different. They're probably not the easiest ones to actually chat while playing, due to the requirement to actually be paying attention at all times. But I will try my best. But I do really like how MAME has gone from these being impossible to emulate, everybody saying there wasn't even any code in them, to people finding out, yeah, they have code, they can be dumped, they can be emulated. And these days, the whole lot is emulated, aside from 2 known revisions and some special editions that run on different hardware. I think Lion is one of the ones that stands out for me. It's also one of the ones that was produced in lower quantities than many of the others. I'm not sure why. Hey Nikki and Bunty, how you doing? Thank you for joining. But yeah, I mean, the people who've done the artwork for these on MAME have done a fantastic job, and if you've got all the artwork files, then they look stunning. I mean, you've got high def and uh, Darth Marino, I think, who did the later ones. But yeah, if every handheld electronic game got this attention, it would be fantastic. But a lot of people are putting more effort than the Nintendo ones, so these look a lot better than, say, the Tiger Game & Watch ones, and some things that still have no artwork whatsoever. But every single Game & Watch one has artwork of this quality. See, I've put line Game B mode now because I died that time. Game B mode has 3 lines, just to add that little bit of extra difficulty, if 2 wasn't enough. And the games do get faster as you go along. It's just how they work. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you want to give an original Game & Watch to a kid these days because they are so valuable and so collectible. I think that's in part because so many of them were just worn to pieces by kids back in the day. I mean, people at the school had these, not this one, but definitely the Donkey Kong one. Yeah, it's not the best, so is it? I mean, you need 2 line keepers per cage all the time. They clearly should just probably repair the bars, but maybe they wanted the lines to have a sense of freedom. But yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of complaints and lawsuits for dead line keepers in the zoo, I fear. Sometimes the lines will taunt you too. They'll run at the cage, the exit, and not actually pop out. So, they've got character. If you look at the high scores on most of these, people have max the score counter, and I guess if this is the game you've got to play, you'll do that. With the handheld game I had, I could definitely complete it, and I've tried since with the one I bought now, and I usually end up failing at some point. That one's not emulated though, because that's not a Game & Watch. I do wonder if I should have maybe sourced some music to play in the background while I was playing these, because otherwise all you're getting is this beep, 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 beep. But that is how most of them sounded, especially the early ones. The later ones did add some extra sound effects, but there we go. I have failed. You can still move the little zookeeper after you have died and game over. You can have a little dance down here. The lines are behaving now. That's quite common to the early ones. I don't know if it's just because it was easier to leave the programming like this, so you could still move the little zookeeper here. But yeah, you'll see that with quite a few of the early ones. You can still control them after the game is over. The Game & Watch machines, little devices, obviously had the watch function as well while they're Game & Watch, and you can set the time in MAME. You can set the little alarm in MAME. I was almost tempted to set the time and set the alarm for the stream start, but then I wasn't actually sure when I'd be starting, and I didn't do that. I might do that in a future one. This is sort of a test stream to see how things go. But yeah, this was Lion. And if anybody's in the chat and has any suggestions for Game & Watch games that they remember, just mention them, because say MAME does run them all, and it runs them all well. So anything you want to see, I can bring up. I'm going to bring up now, actually, one of the more colourful ones. This is one of the Panorama units, and these were nice looking devices. I can zoom the screen if you want. At the moment I'm just keeping it so it displays the case. Yeah, Mickey and Dom does get tough quickly. I think I tried to play that one on the screen, but I'm actually going to zoom this up, because as nice as the case is, I'm telling you, a tiny little window, so it's much easier to play like this. You do have to work out your technique as well. Sometimes I just forget what I'm meant to be doing in the games. This one, you get the key, and you get around the maze. This is Donkey Kong Jr., by the way, the Panorama version. Can you go from up here? You can go from up here, can't you? That probably makes more sense. So now I'm going down this. This one's got little tunes because it's on the slightly newer hardware type. And there we go, I've unlocked that chain. Because in this game, Mario is... well, Mario's captured Donkey Kong. Oh yeah, you've got to go back to get the key as well. I forgot that. So I just failed there by just dropping off into the water. But these Panorama ones with the full colour graphics were really something special, I felt. I mean, you had to pay the price of them too. They were the most expensive of the units by far. But I didn't see any of these Panorama ones back in school. I guess, again, they're probably too expensive. No, fell down. They do all get tough quite quickly, actually. I think the only one I've played for a long time, to the point of almost getting bored of, is the Spitball Sparky one, which takes forever to get going. You know, I like the idea. It's a simple breakout game, but it is a bit slow to get going, that one. Does the coconut do anything? Good question. There you go. You can knock it down, so I guess you can hit the birds with it. Ooh. I've never tried using the coconut, but that's probably because I'm just not very good at this. Oh, no. This one's nice and responsive, at least. If you play the first Donkey Kong one, the controls are really quite laggy. And people have said, you know, is that a problem in MAME? But no, the controls just are quite laggy on that one. Can I get you with the coconut? There we go, I got them with the coconut. Gives me some bonus points too. I think of the Panorama ones, my favourite's probably the Mario Bombs Away one. I might get to that one later. I wanted to go with the one I thought people might be more familiar with, which was the Donkey Kong one. I mean, the Mario's Bombs Away one, it seems quite dark now, because you've pretty much got Mario in, what, the Vietnam War or something like that. It's one of the few Nintendo games that actually has a character smoking in it, the army general on the other side. I think if they were to re-release it in a compilation, like several of the Game & Watch ones, they'd probably end up censoring it. I mean, Fire Attack ended up censored, because it's got the whole sort of Native American Indian stereotype thing that's sort of inappropriate these days. So, you know, back in the day when we were kids, it's sort of harmless cowboys and Indians. Now it's like not appropriate. And there's the whole controversy with Mr. Game & Watch and Smash Brothers, I believe. So that does happen. Yeah, that was two birds with one coconut, really, wasn't it? I mean, I'm not showing these games in their best light in terms of gameplay, because I'm just not good enough at them to do that. Oh, I dropped the key. You can drop the key as well without falling. Oh, I just did there. If you don't get it in the lock, it drops it in the water. So, you know, for simple games, there are a lot of little gameplay elements going on here. You've got to avoid the birds, you've got to collect the keys, you've got to drop the keys in the water, you can knock the coconuts down, you've got to time the lock. And that's the thing with these Donkey Kong ones. The original Donkey Kong was the same. You had to time the jump across to the lock, although there weren't the balloons. But there we go. I have used my lives and only scored 53 points. Game mode B, I think, on this one might just be the harder mode. They're not always as obviously different as in things like Squish, where it changes how the maze works. Most of the time, if you can't see a difference in the difficulty, like for example Lion, where there were 3 lions, it's just going to be starting you off at a slightly more higher, more difficult level. Are there actually more birds here, or am I imagining that? There are plenty of Game & Watch fan sites that will detail all the differences in the game modes. But I didn't actually manage to do the research I was going to do on everything before going live. I ended up emulating that Dora Globe plug and play. Oh dear. So it's the second Dora thing in a week I've ended up looking at. They're both on very similar hardware. That's how you burn through your lives very, very quickly in one of these games. You just get your timing wrong, your rhythm wrong, and you failed. I don't think I actually managed to free Donkey Kong once, did I? I'll give it one more shot, and then possibly look at another game. Now, I don't want to be only doing Game & Watch this stream. Yeah, you see, this starts with one bird if you start on the first difficulty. So you've instantly got an advantage over the harder difficulty, the Game B mode. There, we've got 2 birds now. I've rescued that. Rescued or broken one set of chains. And that is just how this progresses. 3 birds now. And I missed the balloon. It's just got to get your timing right. You have to nail down the timing. I guess the coconuts also act as bird management, because they take a while to respawn after you've knocked them down, so it sort of makes sense to try and get them out of the way every now and again. There we go. If you're a C64 fan, I know Hazemaker did a homebrew recreation of Mario's Cement Factory on the C64. That's another one I might look at later, and one that's interesting because of the 2 different versions of it. All my YouTube videos of these games running do have the download address, the Google Drive address for the artwork. Not the ROMs for obvious reasons, but if you need to find the artwork that I'm using, that's done by High Def and others, then there is the Google Drive link in the standalone videos, non-stream videos. I wish you could grab the key there. That would be so much easier than traversing all the way back around here. ROM-wise, how big are these? The actual ROMs are tiny. The artwork tends to be a lot bigger. I think you're still looking at only about 20 meg for the artwork sometimes. The ROMs themselves are a couple of K. This is the tech did evolve over time, so the later ones do use MCUs with higher content. And there we go, drop the key again. And these later ones have their own melody ROM, and one of the things with the melody ROMs is there doesn't seem to be an electronic readout method for it, so when they've been dumped, they've had to be dumped by sort of people logging the sounds and trying to recreate them based on the ones that were decapped and extracted visually. So there's some room for error in the sounds, although for most of them, where there were problems, people reported the problems and they were fixed. But eventually those do need to be decapped or an electronic readout method found for the audio part. But most of the tunes are correct. There's a, you know, people will look at the different tunes, find references and tell us if there's anything wrong. Mario Cement Factory is an interesting one in terms of tunes actually, because the original tabletop release, and I think that's the one in MAME, has a tune that was far too similar to Queen's Another One Bites the Dust, so later revisions of that changed it. The later revisions aren't done, but it's likely and the audio part of the MCU differs. Oh, the birds are everywhere. Actually, I say birds. Are they bats? I think are they birds or bats? They kind of look like bats, but in full size, this artwork looks fantastic. If I look at the actual full size screen over here, it's really nice. Anyway, that was it. I got 89 points, which is better than I did before. Right. I'm going to switch now to a non-Game & Watch, already a non-Game & Watch. But I wanted to look at something that was added in the latest MAME version, which was in that MAME 0.229. And that is the Entex Black Knight Pinball. Actually, I should run this windowed. There we go. Now, this is a non-video one, so this is just using little LEDs behind, you know, a physical thing with the, you know, the graphics on it. So you can see where you can see the plastic, where you can see through it, and MAME simulates this by just using little lamps. And I managed to find a scan of the artwork that I've put aligned to the lamps. So yeah, I think you select your skill with a slider maybe. And then you hit space to start. Well, the shoot button, and it's pinball. Very, very simple pinball. I mean, this was based on a real pinball table, Black Knight pinball table, and at the time, you know, you couldn't have proper video games, so this came out. And the story goes that this was Entex were originally offered the Dungeons and Dragons license for this and turned it down, saying Dungeons and Dragons was just a passing fad and this would be around for longer, and because this license was cheaper as well. Obviously, nobody really talks about Black Knight pinball now, and everybody knows Dungeons and Dragons. That's often seen as a, you know, a bad business decision, but this was the passing fad too. So had they gone with the Dungeons and Dragons license, maybe they would have just been paying a lot more for a product that didn't have any more life in it anyway. You can see this is really quite primitive. I think this was late 70s. I'm just going to check. You know, this was 82 apparently, so this was when the Game & Watches were on the market. For some reason I thought most of these were a bit earlier, but no, there you go. This was 82. I don't really understand if there's any real strategy to this other than if the ball's near the flippers, which are made of the lights down the bottom, hit the ball. But, you know, pinball in your hands, it was something. I think a little mini table with a physical ball would have been a lot more rewarding. But electronic games were all the rage and resulted in things like this. And I missed the ball apparently. Let's launch it again. So I don't know how the skill slider works in MAME. Is it under machine configuration? There you go. Configurations are a bit like dip switches, but for things that aren't dip switches, like that slider down there. So I'm playing this on difficulty 1. I mean, it might be a little bit difficult to work out what's going on if you're just watching it, but whenever a dot lights up that's not the ones down the bottom there, it's where the ball is. So the ball's at the side, the ball's shooting up round the edge, and I don't really know how it represents where the ball is internally, if it just displays the closest dot or if it's just moving from dot to dot. And there might be a full pinball table for simulation running under here, but I somehow doubt it with the electronics involved. Nintendo did a Game & Watch pinball one too, which again acts in a similar way. You can only see the ball in certain positions. I'll probably put that one in a bit actually because I quite like it. It's not the most playable Game & Watch just because of what it is, but to compare it to this pinball one, I think would be an interesting little thing to do. I looked away from the screen. That's always dangerous in these games. I think I've got 302 points, that's telling me. You seem to get points all the time. That sounds like game over. Yeah, I think I scored 330 points, and that's game over. I mean, maybe somebody went back in time and it's running, you know, the whole virtual pinball in the background. But yeah, I mean, what processor are we on here? A Texas Instrument TMS 1100 at 350 kilohertz, so less than a megahertz. significantly less. It's yeah, it's not the most powerful hardware in the world, is it? But that's Entex Black Knight Pinball, which I thought I'd just bring up briefly before moving on to the Game & Watch Pinball. It's, I don't know, I mean 350 kilohertz really isn't much. And again, these Game & Watches apparently run at 32.7. I don't know. I've never tried programming one of these myself, so I really don't know how far your cycles go. I mean, you're not updating an entire screen of pixels, you're just turning things on and off. I have looked at the code for some of the Game & Watch games, and they're just really difficult to follow because the processor type's non-linear program counter. So you can either organise the ROM in a way where the code seems in order and all the data's in the wrong order and the jumps don't quite make sense, and there's the jumps that refer to data in the program ROM are pulling data from what seems like strange places rather than the code jumping around. It must have been a nightmare to program them. I know people have done their own homebrew ones since then, and I don't envy them. I think HB MAME actually has 2, I want to say, unofficial Game & Watch ones that have been done since. I think they've got original code on. But this is the Nintendo pinball one instead, which just has a left and right flipper. And I think those are your inputs, left, right, and Game A and Game B. So this one doesn't even have the launch button. Okay, it's got little melodies. Yeah, maybe it is then. You're right. I mean, you forget the C64 is. Oh, you do use the right one to actually also do that. Okay. So it's got a multi-purpose one. Apparently I'm not very good at launching a ball. Now I actually find these easier to play without the artwork because the screens are closer together. When you've got the artwork enabled, you have to move where you're looking a lot more than if you've just got the screens showing. For pinball that's not too bad, but if I'm trying to play rain shower, where you're moving the washing left and right, having to switch my eyes between the two screens is really challenging. But yeah, the C64, because it's got all the the hardware sprites and scrolling, you've got games that look arcade quality on it, so you kind of forget it's such a weak processor. But that is the difference hardware acceleration makes on those old systems, really. Whereas with the CPC and Spectrum, you're doing most stuff in software. As soon as you've got your hardware sprites, hardware scrolling, that CPU time is free to do a lot more. And if you look at some of the new C64 developments, they're absolutely stunning. A lot of them look better than your NES games. I do quite often drop in Hazemaker 64 streams and just watch the C64 stuff he streams, because he does stream quite a lot of the newer games. And I didn't grow up with the C64, but I have to say I've been very impressed by them. This plays a lot more like a real pinball game in the sense that there's so many more positions where it shows the ball and you can see the balls moving around a table rather than just being lights and a static image, sort of printed overlay. Nintendo, maybe the pinball game they did on the NES is better known than this one. And that pinball game on the NES has somehow ended up in so many bootleg plug and plays, dance mats, Wii rip-offs where they've replaced the graphics and made it look like a modern game, but it's still the same pinball game. It even got ported to some of the NES rip-off hardware, the VT1682, which isn't even really a NES. The video hardware is entirely different, but they still ported the NES pinball code to it and changed how the video worked on that. It's just fascinating how that type of thing happens. Yeah, see, that's the other thing with the C64. It's not one of the 1 to 8K computers. And if you look at the number of games on the Spectrum where it feels like you needed that 128K to make the game feel like it had content. It's surprising, again, the number of games on the C64 and just how much content they have, and managed to squeeze into that 64K without seemingly having loading times all the time from discs, or some of them are on cartridge, so that's an advantage because you've got instant access to all the data. But even a lot of the disc ones and tape ones are very impressive for what they managed to squeeze into 64K. When I look at Spectrum games, I'm always looking for the 1 to 8K ones, just because the 48K ones always feel, especially the bigger games, like there's too much missing, or they've got horrible multi-loads. I think the sound on this could be better. This is very beep, 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 because it beeps every time the ball moves. It's got the nice big pinball digit, lots of score digits, which you need in a pinball game. So, Nintendo paid attention to what people were doing with real pinball machines. It's not trying to cram the score into sort of 3 digits. You've got a whole bunch of them up there. I'll probably do a follow-up stream to this at some point. I don't know how to keep that one on Twitch or do another one on YouTube, but I thought, I should make use of this Twitch account now and again, just so it's not a complete waste of time having it. Plus, sort of hedge your bets if YouTube streaming falls apart and they cut the service or make changes to the service that mean it's not possible to use it effectively anymore. It would be good to have an established backup of some sort. Anyway, pinball. Apparently I scored 39,900 points, which isn't even using all of the digits. Shall I stick with Game Watch, or shall I look at one of the other editions in 229? I'm going to go with another edition in 229. I know I said it's a Game & Watch stream, but I did say other electronics. Hey Arimas, how are you doing? Or Arimas. Right. This one is another one that's a non-video. Mattel's Basketball. Again, I should want to move the window sometime. Here we go. Now, a lot of people wanted to see the Mattel ones running for a long time because they're well-known games, they're famous games. More primitive than the Game & Watch. I think this really is early. Yeah, this is 78, so this predates the Game & Watches. Again, you've just got your grid of, little LEDs to represent what's going on, where the players are, the other players are, where you are. And so, it's very simple. You've just got to try and get past the defenders, who are some of the lamps. You're the brighter lamp, so you've got to try and pull them out of position, find a way through, get to the basket and score. It's very simple. Again, in the 70s, this is what people were growing up with. This is what they played, and we did get quite a lot of requests for this one to be in MAME. So this is before Game & Watch. So it's always good to see what came before as well as the Game & Watch ones, because the Game & Watch ones are highly impressive. But in terms of a simple concept and simple gameplay, without any real video, things like this were the ones that really set the way, even before Nintendo were doing the Game & Watch. These paved the way for that type of thing. Oh, I missed the ball. I missed through the ball even. You don't have to get right above the net, you just got to have a basket, you just got to get a really clear shot. Again, it's probably easier for me to know what's going on because I'm playing it. I'm moving along the bottom here, you see. And I can move up and down, past the defenders. There we go, I managed to get the basket without getting right next to it. Yeah, and there was the football one and the hockey one. I don't think the MAME does the standalone football one yet. Yeah, the limits for these were really tight. You could barely get a game out of them. But they managed to do something that has mechanics that have something to do with the original games. Oh, lost it. I did have to grab the manual and just work out what I was doing on these, because you do have to know. You can't really just pick them up and instantly know what you're meant to do and what the strategy is. Yeah, you have 20 red lights, a CPU with a tiny amount, that you can put a tiny amount of code in, and that's it. Hardly any memory. I mean, I think some of these, this type of game probably doesn't even have real memory for a lot of it. I believe the Game & Watch ones, even the memory that's used for the display segments is also the same memory that it uses to know where the things are, and it just shifts them around, you know, shifts one state to another. So it's not storing them in another block of memory, then copying them to the display. Well, the memory it's using for the display is the memory, and that's why things have to be organised in a certain way in the ROM date in the unit, so that when they change the states of them, they move to the next state that's the correct state. And yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to try and program any of these myself back in the day. I think I would have been put off programming for life if this is what I had to work with. But technology advanced very quickly. It would have been quite a time to be alive, I think. So I think one reason I struggled to relate to a lot of books when I was younger is because I'm just thinking they existed in a world before where this was the height of technology, and technology was a lot of my life, so I was like, how? Anyway, I'm not going to play this for too long because it's probably not the most fascinating one to watch, and I did say Game & Watch stream. But yeah, just really nice. Yeah, this was support for this was added in 229, so I wanted to give it a little demonstration. There are a few more as well added in 229. I think the hockey one was, and this was a different type of CPU that wasn't one that was emulated before, as far as I know. So there you go. That was that one. Back to Game & Watch. Let's go for... I mentioned Rain Shower, didn't I? What's the short name? R-Shower, probably. Now this one. This is one where you do have to keep an eye on both sides of the screen, because you have to stop the washing from getting wet. You know, it's a very simple concept, but it's a concept that people can understand. Well, apart from, rain doesn't really work like that, but nobody wants their washing to get wet. So you move your little character, you move the washing backwards and forwards. The button toggles where the washing is. So this one's going to hit the bottom. That one's going to hit the bottom, move that out of the way. But you've got to keep close eye on both sides of the screen. And this is one I really struggle with, actually. I'm not going to lie. I find this to be a very difficult game. Move that out of the way. That's not going to hit that. We'll hit that. That's going to hit that. But, yeah, I'm sure you could retheme this with a volcano spitting out fire and not burning your... Oh, I missed that one. Burning and I don't want to burn things. And it wouldn't be the only time that Game & Watch games had been rethemed. The Russian market got a bunch of code clones, where they'd clone the code in the MCU, because they clearly knew that there was code in them long before we did, and made some original games. I might look at one of those in a bit. What's going on? These are very stressful games if you lack the coordination. Missed that one almost. Oh no! My washing got wet. The concepts using these remain popular. You'll still find toys today with these ideas, copies of them. There we go, I've already lost on Rain Cloud. What was game B on this one, apart from probably even harder? Okay. This is game B apparently. Oh, they've got the bird, haven't you? Yeah, you got the birds that move the... I do like this one, I'm just really bad at it and out of practice. Yeah, that's one thing I think of with these, it's like how could you retheme them and still have a game that worked with the mechanics you've got here. Oh, got to move that one. There is one of the games that is easier in mode B, I think. Is it the lifeboat one? I'm not doing well. So, that's going to hit there. There's annoying birds. Well, in that case, the bird's not so annoying because it actually moved it for me where I needed to go. But still, those annoying birds. Oh, too late. So, that's Rain Shower. Too difficult for me. Where shall we go? I'm going to go with... Actually, I'm going to go with what I would consider to be my favourite of these. And that is Oil Panic. I feel this is a good demonstration of what Game & Watch technology was. You're trying to manage things on both screens. You can try and time things between the two screens. And it's a very simple concept of, you know, passing what you collect in the top screen down to the bottom screen at the right time. So if I press that and start the game, you know, I control the Game & Watch character on the top screen. I have to pour this stuff into the bucket on the bottom screen when the character down there that I don't control is in the correct position. And I can't allow what I'm collecting at the top to overflow, and I can't miss when I'm pouring it down. But this is a case of very simple. Yeah, you see, I missed. I poured it down, poured it on his head, and he was not happy with oil in his hair. Again, I don't really know why there is gas leaking, oil leaking from the ceiling of the station, but there is, and I let it drop down there. Yeah, it works, the viewpoint, because you can see close up there at the top, and you can see what's below the bottom and the outside of the building view. You can see me sticking my head out the window and pouring it down there. So yeah, I do like the way this one's presented. And you have a few of the Game & Watch games, the dual screen like this, that really don't make good use of it. The Bomb Sweeper one, the top screen may as well not be there, it serves no purpose. This one, both screens have a real purpose. And you don't have to pay too much attention to the screen the whole time. You've just got to do it when you're about to pour. So it's one I can manage rather than, say, the dreamGEAR one where you're constantly having to look at both screens, which is a bit of a push too far for my personal coordination skills. Yeah. I love also the way the art's drawn on all these. The little characters have such a look of panic the whole time they're playing. I think it's called oil panic, but he's happy there. He looks very worried there. He looks terrified there. They've got so much expression for just, you know, static images, and I think that is probably one of the reasons they end up so popular as well. They have character. No, I don't want to do that. No. Timing was all wrong there. Now there are bonuses if you go for a certain amount of time without, you know, missing anything. If you're good enough, you know, you get double points for a while on most of these games, or they'll clear your misses if you do miss at a certain point level. I don't think I'm going to be demonstrating many of those today because you do have to actually practice the games and get quite good at them. Oh. You can empty early, sometimes it's wise. Yeah, a lot of people have also said that they've put these on arcade cabinets because most of them have simple controls that do suit that. You've got your left, your right, your button sometimes. So, you know, I wasn't paying attention then. But yeah, that's how you get 55 points on Oil Panic and Fail. I put in game B mode briefly, but I think this is another one where it's the same, but it starts a little bit faster, a little bit more difficult. This is an earlier one with just the standard sound as well, so there's no fancy melodies here, but that's not a bad thing. I know many of these have been re-released in compilations by Nintendo over the years, but typically none of those were perfect compilations, and a lot of them were on underpowered devices such as the original Game Boy Color. So the emulated versions are really the first time you can play the proper ones. There were also recreations, fan recreations, but the logic's not always correct in there because no matter how much you study a game, unless you're running the original code, things like the randomization, the exact timing of things is never going to be perfect. You can get it close, but you don't actually know how the random numbers were generated unless you're running the original code. So you can just guess. So I haven't really seen anybody streaming these either when I've been watching other streams, which surprised me because I would have thought there'd be more people wanting to do them, but maybe they consider them a little bit dull. Hey Matt, yeah, Pac-Man Twin, that was added in 229. It's one of the surprising ones I didn't expect to see, but it did show. I mean, we knew there were boards out there, and strangely it seems about 3 or 4 different boards showed up at the same time. But I've said before that sometimes happens because they've been stuck in a warehouse somewhere for years and then suddenly sold off at auction to unknowing buyers, and then they'll get end up on eBay eventually. I think that must be what happened, because it's gone from a game where there was maybe one known copy to 3 just showing up, and they're all original boards. You know, the conversions, not somebody's made them more recently. No, dear. I mean, I'm not going to be playing Pac-Man Twin on this stream because it's not a Game & Watch or electronic game or related to them. The only Pac-Man, there are a few Pac-Man things emulated, electronic ones that I could look at some point. But Pac-Man Twin will probably be on one of my YouTube streams when I do a sort of either maze games or just miscellaneous games. And I do plan on doing another one of those because there are a lot of games that I can't fit into any clear genre as well, or just a case of this was added, it'd be nice to show it off. I could have themed this around the release, but, and I don't know, maybe doing a release theme, a release themed stream every 2 or 3 releases might make more sense, because there's only 1 or 2 games in each one that I think people might want to see. I'm failing here. Yeah, I mean, Roberto had documented it quite well on his website, because being from Argentina, it's one he was familiar with and had seen a lot of. So a lot of the scene were aware of it, and it was on the unMAME site, but since there's been no real movement towards finding it for a long time, nobody was really talking about it more recently. I think people are just giving up on the idea that it would ever show up, and then it showed up, because that's what happens sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I think there was still 1 or 2 known Pac-Man hacks out there that haven't been found, but that was always going to be one of the most extensive ones, whereas the other ones are probably just graphic hacks, maze hacks. The company's trying to cash in on how popular Pac-Man was by selling their own little modifications. You've got the famous ones in MAME, your piranhas, your hangly mans. There was that one with the planets that was added. Was it Saturn type thing? Can't even remember what it's called. That seemed to show up on Japanese auctions quite often, but that's really just seems to be another hack of Piranha, which was a hack of Pac-Man in the first place, with different graphics. Right, let's go with another game on watch. Let's go with Tropical Fish. So we're back to a one with just a single screen. Yeah, there's newer hacks. I mean, HB MAME has a lot of hacks in it. One of the MAME also emulates one of the Pac-Man multi games, which has a whole bunch of different hacked up Pac-Mans in, and that was a slightly more recent addition. Not addition, a release as a kit. There's a lot out there. I think you've got high score save kits as well that were unofficial. But if there's demand for such products, they get made. But this one is a nice simple case of get the fish from one aquarium to the other, and they like to jump out of their bowl, and you've got to stop them hitting the floor, because I'm sure you can see that little cat in waiting down there, behaving ever so well, not jumping into the fish tanks, but not really a good kitty. Lower maintenance than the fish, mind you. I mean, these fish are definitely not well behaved. I mean, there's a lot of newer Pac-Man games being released officially these days on those mini arcade cabinets and stuff. I think you can count 3 or 4 official variations that have licenses that are all original creations, but they're not always easy to emulate. A lot of them have got internal ROMs and such. they're not really hacks, they're ports. It's just surprising to see original ports of Pac-Man today, because you would have thought anybody just doing Pac-Man is going to, well, will emulate the arcade version. But they want to target them at really low-powered devices with tiny screens. So you end up with original ports instead. I mean, some of those would almost count for the stream if they were emulated, because they're such odd devices. Why make a a device with a resolution of 128 by 128 pixels in 2020, 2019? But it happens. Yeah, I do like these simple ones as well. I guess you'd call these juggling games. They're really just an extension of the the basic juggling game, the egg game. Not egg. What was the juggling one? Egg's not the juggling one. Ball. But with extra movement and not moving your hands, but juggling fish. And again, fire and things like that are a similar concept. Get things from one side to another. So you do see that with the Game & Watch. There's all sorts of the same sort of ideas, just presented in different ways, mixed up in different ways. But they're all the same sort of reflex coordination, watching what's going on, keeping your eye on multiple things, challenges. At least the better ones are. Or the more pure ones. Things like the Super Mario one are very different to that. I was never a fan of the Super Mario one, actually. It feels a bit too abstract. You've got to use too much of your imagination to work out what's what. The same parts of the graphics are used for too many different things. Super Mario feels a little more like a Tiger game than a Nintendo game. I'll probably put it on in a little bit, actually. Yes, grab your fish, kitty. But, that's a nice touch. Considering all the licenses Nintendo were using, I'm surprised they didn't go with something like Garfield for this. Have Garfield steal your fish, or jumping lasagnas, I'm not sure. Anyway, that was Tropical Fish, and I scored 123 points. Game B is similar, except the fish start jumping back the other way, and it all gets even more hectic. Yeah, I'll put that on. I think if I start Game B, it is mapped, isn't it? Yeah. You'll start to see fish go back in the other direction now. There you go, you see that one's jumped back in that way. So now it is, again, more like you're juggling them. That is how they made Game B more difficult in this version, this game. You can't just rely on, knowing the fish are going to bounce out in one direction. They could bounce out in either. It's not just one that starts at a higher speed. So again, you've got all the expressions on the little character's face here, which I just really like. Visually, this one is probably one of the ones that appeals to me most. Here we go. Yeah, I'm just happy to see all these emulated, because it's one of those things that I just thought would never happen. I just hope we can manage to get the same done for what the ones we currently don't have any way of dumping. A lot of the cheaper units, because all the ones I didn't grow up with the Game & Watch ones myself. I grew up with more generic ones from different companies, and a lot of those are just globs rather than proper MCUs. And no way of dumping them. So I've got a whole bunch set in a little drawer over there where I've sent 1 or 2 of them off. Found we can't dump them and just waiting for maybe a time when it's possible. I should have got them out the drawer actually before I did the stream so I could show them on the stream, but that's probably not the best thing to do right now. It is in the drawer full of random plug and play parts that must look very strange. You know, all the sports ones that come with boxing gloves and Wii remote rip-offs and plastic tennis bats and the stuff that I just need to actually get rid of at some point. Now we've got them emulated. Oh, but yeah. Can I beat my score from the game A? Can I get to 123 points? You can actually out from that side. See, they even start on the other side sometimes too, as you're seeing now. So you've got to watch both sides the whole time on game B. We're going to fall first. Again, it's amazing how much game they can pull off. No, I didn't beat my score. How much game they can pull off with just a few on-screen elements. And I think that's, if you're trying to make a game for yourself. I mean, people use the term COB, chip on board. There's no physical package for the chip. It's just the die from inside, what would usually be inside the chip, covered in sort of an epoxy blob, a glob, and directly on the board. And only the pins they need are bonded out from that. So sometimes even if there's something that's a known MCU type under one of those, if what would usually be a pin on it isn't exposed externally by any line, then you can't access it. So there are some where there's a known dump method, but it relies using a test pin, and that test pin is not connected in any way externally. So you've just got this blob of epoxy, no chip package inside it. If you remove the epoxy, you destroy the chip entirely because the die is so sensitive. So unless it's a mask ROM part with visible bits, then you can't just decap them and dump them that way. They're a bit of a nightmare. I mean, for a lot of these plug and plays, both the CPU and the ROMs are stored like that, but when there is a separate ROM blob, and you can trace out the where everything goes to it, you can solder wires to the PCB and read them out. That's what Sean's been doing for a lot of those. I mean, it's what he's just done for the Dora Globe and the Dora Adventure phone thing. Dora TV phone, Dora Adventure Globe. He had to solder direct to the board for those because there are no real packages. But when it's a single chip with the CPU die and the ROM die inside, sort of MCU type, it becomes much more difficult, and most of the cheaper handheld games use that technology. We're just lucky that for Nintendo they used real proper, physical chip type, a real proper chip type, and it happened to be a chip type that had a readout mechanism, a method that was known. But for most of the others, we're not that lucky. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. We just have to see what people manage to do. Oh yeah, these have clickable artwork too. So you can click left and right if you want, but not the best way to play them. Okay. SMB, Super Mario Bros. Again, I said I'm not a huge fan of this one because the lines that make up the platforms have so many meanings. And unless you know Mario lore, you might not pick up on what everything is, because they're not always platforms. Sometimes they're the spinning fireballs that kill you. But it was a popular one, I believe, because it's Super Mario and people wanted this even if they had a proper version of Super Mario just for the novelty factor. This is a very nice looking device. These crystal screen ones. The screen is semi-transparent, so you can actually see what's under the screen. Obviously, you don't really get that effect in MAME because we can't really do transparency to nothing. But, you know, MAME's not going to give a transparency over OBS with an alpha level or anything like that, so that effect is lost a little bit on the screen here. But yeah, in terms of owning one, they do look nice. I'm not as convinced by the gameplay on them. I guess they've got a sort of runner aspect to them because it's auto-scrolling. Yeah, there was a different case variation of this, and I got trapped. The other case version is treated as a different set because the display was a bit different too, and the SVGs are part of the ROM sets. But the case art isn't, but the SVGs are. I always forget you can't jump over those. I'll put the other one on shortly, actually. It's the same game as far as we know. The actual ROM is the same. It was just presented in a different way. These were the more expensive versions. There's a special edition case 2, but it's quite unlikely you had that one. Yeah, I mean, these are playable, and if you look at the better Tiger games, they're the ones that try and do something like this. The Tiger Gauntlet game isn't trying to push things too far. It's just got simple walls rather than use your imagination to try and guess what's going on. But again, this is getting closer to a Tiger game. You see here, those aren't platforms. Those are the fire stick things that kill you. So, you know, don't try and jump on them. If you don't know Mario, you haven't seen Mario or played Mario before, you have no idea what the rotating bits were. But if you have, you know. And here, it's that you move up and down. I don't know if this is meant to be close to sort of the swimming levels, but you know, there's no gravity anymore. They're trying to do maybe a little bit too much, I think, because they're trying to represent a much more complex game on this type of screen. It's still playable though. It's just when you say Game & Watch to me, this isn't the first one that would come to mind in terms of what the concept was all about. This also doesn't have the Game A, Game B mode like a lot of them. There is a way to, I think, start at a high difficulty, but it's not done in the same way. So it's a bit of a departure in that sense too. Now we've got gravity. So you've got moving platforms too. Again, you can maybe play this one a little bit too long before it gets challenging. And sometimes with a Game & Watch, you just want it to be challenging from the start. Like I said, I think there is a way to start it more challenging, but it's not as obvious. Well, I mean, it's challenging if you just slip and do that. Anyway, there is another part in this where you're going down some pipes, and again the pipes are just represented with these walls. So unless you've played Mario and you know there's pipes in Mario, you're probably not going to know that you've got to go over the pipe and press down. I've got 1 life left. I'll see how far I get with this. Sorry, I was reading a chat message there and got squashed by a wall. Still. I think, did I get an extra life at some point? I don't know. I mean, they're probably already pushing the limit of what they can do with the segments on this, because if you look at how many segments you need to make a whole screen grid, it's probably most of them that they had available. So trying to divide them into 2 parts, probably far too many. I don't mind that I got distracted, by the way. It happens. You know, I'll be looking there, and and I'm not trying to go for high scores or beat any personal records on these. I just wanted to, you know, show a few of them off, demonstrate them. There we go. And this is also shows lives as a counter that goes down rather than the counter that goes up, which is more like a proper. Oh yeah, you see, you've actually got some platforming challenge section here, but the counter that goes down is more like a NES game, whereas the Game & Watch always counted your misses and added to them every time you lost a life. Although Octopus does something slightly different, and I really like how that one handled lives. I'll probably come to that one in a moment. No. Okay, well, that is me squashed. Lapses of concentration. We'll do that in any of these. I'm not sure really how you played these on a school playground with everybody around you trying to talk to you, because you just do that all the time. There you go. Only, well, level 1, 7. Didn't even reach level 2. Didn't reach the pipes. But that is that's that. Octopus, I said. Oh no, I said I was going to look at the other Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, it came in the new widescreen case like this too, which is probably the one you had. This was the sort of slightly cheaper case. There might be some other. And it also came in the special case like that, but that is the very expensive case. But people have made nice scans of them, so yes, you can look at the different case types. Octopus. Again, this seems to be one of the popular ones. It's one of the early ones, I believe. I want to say 81, another 81 game. Yeah, I thought it was. But the way it does the remaining lives is that they are actually the divers in the boat. Although if you do that, you see, I've lost that life. Then the divers have moved over. This is the current diver who goes down into the water. So this one does count down the lives, but it's a proper visual indication of it. I can tell I've got one diver left in reserve because there's one diver in the boat. And that is something that a lot of games get wrong. You know, there's so many games where is one life on the life counter mean there's one life left, or this is your last life. In this game, it's entirely clear because, you know, when there's no more little, you know, divers in the boat, you've got no lives left and the game is over. In fact, the last one has been caught there by the octopus, very sad looking octopus. But it's game over. Now I've got my 3 divers. One of them's going into the water. And I can play this game, honestly. I just get a bit out of practice. Deceptively simple, but very challenging. Bombs Away has a similar mechanic of just having to time your way through obstacles, and that's what I mean. A lot of the games use similar simple concepts in different ways. You see, don't be too greedy or you get trapped. I probably like this one more if I wasn't so bad at it. I think my lesson is don't try and steal treasure from an octopus. In terms of rethemes, you could retheme this one as something with a big dragon and the dragon's hoard of treasure and not be underwater, I guess. I don't think that was ever a retheme that happened. Okay, let's not play Octopus. I'm out of practice at it, and that was embarrassing. I mean, Nintendo did their own rethemes. If we look at Egg briefly, Egg is the same game as Mickey Mouse. Except in the Mickey Mouse one, it's Mickey Mouse collecting the eggs, and the keys are IKED. But yeah, I mean, the code on these is confirmed as the same. What's interesting is, prior to it being confirmed, a lot of people were saying that, you know, one of them is easier than the other. But in terms of the code that's running, that's not actually possible. But they're the same game. It's exactly the same code, just a different screen. Pardon me. Maybe the visuals are clearer on one of them, which makes it easier to play. You know, difficulty can come from more than just the code. If it looks more like one of the eggs is going to crash onto the ground in this one, you're more likely to go for it, just by slight positioning differences. But technically, neither game is easier or more difficult than the other. Oh, drop that egg. Yeah, I was going to bring up the Russian one in a moment. That is one thing I was coming to. Yeah, they are very cute. Again, Nintendo really did get the visuals perfect for what these games. But this is a very simple concept of just make sure your character is in the right place at the right time to not drop the egg. Another egg dropped. These chickens do lay a lot of eggs. Never ending. Oh well. 87. Not very good at this. At least not at the moment. But yeah, what was just said, This is one of the ones that was cloned by the Russian company. Twice, in fact. Elektronika of Russia in '84 realised that you could copy the MCUs and just released versions of the Game & Watches with their own graphics, their own skins, and this was one of them. I can't really pronounce the Russian, but see, again, it's the same code. You can tell it's the same game. I don't know if Nintendo knew they were exact clones back in the day, or if Nintendo were even aware of these. These might have just been completely off the radar. But it's got its own style to it, so no, it's still worth checking out. Not quite as cute as the Nintendo versions, and I don't think our SVGs are quite of the same quality, but you can see what it is. This was one clone. There was another clone. This one is Explorers of Space, and this mixes things up a little bit more. I mean, instead of the character catching eggs, you've got this little lander ship, and it's got its defense shield, and you're moving the defense shield around. So it's the same underlying game, but it feels different. And this is just through different sprite positioning. Well, not sprite, but, you know, graphic positioning. And a different theme. But if you think about it, it's doing the same thing. You've got 4 positions. You're defending 4 positions, not from falling eggs, but from these bullets. So yeah, that was one of the fascinating things for me when these were emulated, was discovering the clones that were obviously very famous in Russia. I would have never seen one of these growing up. But this is what people there remember, rather than the Nintendo version. Not quite as easy to play. I do find this more difficult because you can't quite tell when the bullets are about to hit, just due to the fact they're quite far away before they actually hit the ship, and then they hit the ship. So it doesn't work quite as well as a reskin as maybe it could have done. It might have helped to have the bullets and the shield, the final step, a bit closer to the ship. But yeah, it's the same game, a different skin. And that brings me on to wanting to look at... I did mention that some of the modern handheld systems rip off these concepts. So there's no sound emulation on this one, unfortunately. But these are from maybe, I want to say 5 years ago. And they're low resolution systems, 160 by 128, based on this Citronics chip, which is 24 megahertz, believe it or not. And this is one version dreamGEAR put out. And these have quite a few games that are clearly themed around Game & Watch games. I mean, this is Recieve Eggs. Does this look familiar? You know, even these days, there are companies releasing things like this, just really borrowing the ideas from the Game & Watches. And yes, this is about 5 years old. And if you've got the original hardware, quite a few of the games in this have odd renditions of Sega music. There's Sonic tunes in the background of several of them, and they're very strange things. But you see, this is clearly a rip-off of Nintendo's Egg. There's other things in here too. This one's called Honey Mary. It probably should be called Mario Cement Factory, really, shouldn't it? Because, well, if you fall straight down like that and bang your head, it should be called Factory Accident Simulator based on that. But yes, you know, the platforms move, those things fill up when it actually gives me some cement or honey. Sorry, honey. It's definitely honey. This is not Mario and this is not a cement factory. This is a honey factory. But yeah, this is something I worked on the emulation of earlier in the year. Yeah, the bees must be somewhere else. They're probably going ahead to make some sort of Donkey Kong 3 rip-off instead, rather than being visible. But you know, there we go, and you see they go down there and don't fall down. Yeah, I mean, if we look at the proper version, there are two. I'd say there are two versions of Cement Factory. In fact, the tabletop one came first, I'm told, but the one most people seem to know is the widescreen version. So, but yes. The key difference between the two in terms of the gameplay is that there's a place to hide at both sides, both top and bottom, if you take the lift too far. On the tabletop version, on this version there isn't. You know, there's not the little alcove at the top that there is on the bottom. So you see, on this I can go down here and I can hide down here at the bottom, but there's no equivalent place at the top. The tabletop version does actually have a place at the top where you can retreat to. I'll show you that in a bit. I always get confused over which direction the platforms are moving in this, unfortunately. I think that this is another case where it could have done with a few extra segments to make things a bit clearer. But this is otherwise this is a good use of a single screen. I do think some of the best games were actually these new widescreen ones rather than the dual screen ones. So that's me in trouble because there was nowhere to hide. But, anyway, yeah, you've got to get you can't let any of the actual well, boxes. I don't know, what do you call something you keep cementing? You can't let any of them fill up, otherwise they overflow, and then the drivers get a bit annoyed below. It's a bit like the other ones in Oil Panic where you poured oil into them. Here the concrete will overflow onto them, which is probably more painful. And you can see Mario is his rock friend on the left there on the artwork. But yeah, I'm not going to play that one too much because I want to show the other one, which is the tabletop version. This is apparently the version that came first in its nice little tabletop and colour screen. I'm going to zoom this one up because the actual default view is quite small and there's no real artwork on the screen. But this has the extra places at the top and bottom to hide. They don't look quite the same, but you see, if I go down here, I can hang there. There was a platform on the other one, but here I'm hanging onto a pole, looking quite concerned. I should really get back there. So there's only one of these platforms, and my cement's building up. But presentation-wise it's a bit different, but also on this one, I can hang up there. There's no place to hang at the top on the widescreen version. You still get squash if you do that, but it's interesting that the game design changed between the two versions. The code is entirely different between both versions too. It was reprogrammed from scratch. Not the only case of the games being reprogrammed from scratch. The things like Manhole have two very different versions, but it's maybe one of the more interesting ones because it does change how you have to play the game in a more significant way, I feel. Right, we're just about an hour and a half now. I want to try and keep this first stream about 2 hours, so probably got another half an hour of this. No, I don't do that. Or that. I need to clear out this bottom one. This isn't quite as cute as the new widescreen version. It's not quite got that Nintendo art style. And oh, this is the one that's got another one bites the dust music that they had to change in a later revision of the tabletop that you've probably heard it play a few times. But I don't think that's why the game's re-released in widescreen form, because they did reissue this without that tune. I think I mentioned it, but Hazemaker64 did his own homebrew Commodore 64 version of this, which you can check out, although it was based on the other version, not this version. I always think that these games, somebody should port all these Game & Watch as some sort of collection to the 8-bit computers, because they're perfect for this kind of thing. You could easily create a sort of disc with all the Game & Watch games for a Spectrum or an Amstrad CPC. You could probably even, you know, translate the code from the original MCUs line by line and just re-implement the graphics. I think they have enough power to do that, because these aren't really fast devices. The code isn't complex, it's just difficult to follow. But I'm kind of surprised that they weren't ported back in the day in that sense. But maybe it was just felt that if you own a computer, a proper computer, you don't want games that are simple graphics moving in chunks. I do want to briefly look at a game where the graphics do move in chunks. There was an arcade game that got very limited release and also was on home systems. And I will probably do that after this one, actually, because it will also lead into another Nintendo game, and that's probably when... No. This is a bit too zoomed in, isn't it? I'm losing some of the live counter. That's, yeah, interesting. The unit only... The background only view on this one is too zoomed in. I might have to mention that to the artwork maintainer. I did notice the live counter was missing. Chopped off. Odd. Very odd. Anyway, that was Mario Cement Factory, the tabletop version. Now I'm going to look at an arcade game from Spain. It was also on the home systems, but it is probably the closest thing you're going to get to a Game & Watch that was an arcade game. This was Dynamic and Inder. And this is Hammerboy. Now, if you've seen Hammerboy before, you'll probably know which Game & Watch game it's trying to be. I'm defending a fort. People are attacking that fort with fire. I've just told you what the Game & Watch game is, haven't I? And it's every bit as inappropriate in theme as the Game & Watch game. Because it's the same theme as the Game & Watch game. And it's quite difficult, and I just lost. But it plays like a Game & Watch game. Because it is a Game & Watch game with video. You move your character in chunks left and right, and you go over where the fire is and hammer the fires and stop these people climbing up. And it does have multiple stages, though, I'll give it that. It's not entirely set on a fort. You can afford a certain number of misses before the whole thing sets on fire, and it gets faster and faster. And the problem is the controls are a little bit laggy on it. And the last thing you want on a game like this is laggy controls. She failed again. 5 of them got past me and they burnt the fort down. But then you have to start again. It's a case of surviving for the timing as well. So you can't have a strategy. I mean, I've got to be careful of the fire more so than the main climbing now, because I've already got 3 fires that have gone off. I'm actually really bad at this. I've got any mistakes now. Whew. And there we go. Okay. But then stage 2 on this actually moves on to a different theme. So now it's the same game but with pirates. Anyway, the point of this stream was not to play arcade games, but I wanted to look at that because it leads into this. This is Fire Attack, one of the 82 games. Dynamic released Mega Phoenix and Hammer Boy with Inder. They were very limited releases in Spain. I think No Named was also going to get a release and it never came to anything, and maybe 1 or 2 others. But yeah, they're interesting ones to look at. I did cover Mega Phoenix on a previous stream. The ones I emulated a few years ago now. But yeah, this is Fire Attack. And what control? This is a 2-stick one, isn't it? Yeah, ED, IK, ED. Okay. Well, let's pretend that didn't happen. But, you know, you're moving your character between the positions. If the fire comes in, you've got to hit the fire. Not let the fort burn down. And you've got to be a bit better at it than I am. It doesn't play quite the same, but the theme is the same. And you can tell that Hammer Boy is based on them playing this. And this is one of those that, yeah, is generally considered culturally inappropriate these days due to the representation. So you're not going to see Nintendo officially re-release this one, at least not without heavy modifications to the theme. Although, you know, the Dynamic game potentially gives them some suggestions. You know, they could change it to a pirate-themed game with cannonballs and people trying to board your ship. And there you go, it might be considered okay. That's also why I think it's important to have these emulated in original form, because some of them, they are products of the time. And they can't be re-released. So, you know, the design changes here, or on Hammer Boy rather, clearly were done to try and make it a structured game with multiple levels. So you've got timer for each level rather than having to defend everything. You know, you're allowed to miss a certain amount within the time limit. But, oddly, I find the title of this one odd because Nintendo already had Fire, one of the first Game & Watch games, and then they've got Fire Attack, but the games aren't in any way related. Fire is just a burning building that you're rescuing people from, whereas this is Fire Attack, about people trying to burn down your wooden fort, and clearly succeeding because I'm very bad at defending this fort. Oh dear. Yeah, Orc Attack. I had that on the Amiga. You're throwing the rocks down at the orcs trying to climb the walls, aren't you? Lots of blood and gore in that one, I seem to remember. A game I played quite a lot on the Amiga, actually. I did enjoy it. I had it on one of those PD discs. I think it was probably shareware, please register me, but I just had the PD version. I'm assuming it was probably on other platforms too. Or maybe it wasn't, maybe it was an Amiga exclusive. I've not really researched it since. Was it in Amos? If it was done in Amos, maybe it was only on Amiga. Unless the Amiga was a fan recreation, I don't know. But my fort got burnt down. And we'll call that one. Because not everybody wants to see fire. Should we go with the final one? Mario the Juggler. The last Game & Watch release, the one that I think Nintendo were trying to say, come on, Mario's our new mascot, he looks like this is how the games look now. But it's time to move on. It plays out like the original Ball, the first Game & Watch game, just with Mario and slightly different gameplay mechanics. But you're juggling all the little stars and hearts. C64 was it? And Atari 8-bit. I did not know that at all. I only knew it from the Amiga. So was the Amiga version the same program, or did somebody just play that version, the older versions, and go, I like this, I want to make this on the Amiga? I don't know. I mean, if you don't know either, then that's fine. I'm just sort of thinking out loud with that. Yeah, I think a lot of people were disappointed with this as a final Game & Watch release because it is just the same idea as Ball, which is a fine idea. It's what the Game & Watches were all about. But I think people were hoping for something a bit more ambitious, especially after they'd done the Super Mario one, which had a lot more going on. But that might be missing the point, really. I think this is a nice little game. It definitely has that newer Nintendo look to it. You can tell this isn't a game from the early 80s. This is how Mario looked going forward. This is still how Mario really looked even when you got to the N64. This visual style. Modern Mario. And there we go. I dropped that. It's got the little Mario tunes, hasn't it? Yeah. What do we do now? Just looking around, working out what I want to do next. Okay, I'm going to try and see if I understand how raids work on this, and if I can work that out, I'll probably just send you over to Sypho's stream where he's playing Marvels on Stream tonight. He often does retro stuff, but Thursday nights are Marvels on Stream. So let's do that. See, I don't know how this works from a... yeah, thank you for everybody who joined, and it's been good having a chat with you. And I'm still trying to learn a little bit of the Twitch thing myself, so I am going to click raid now, and we should be in Sypho's Marbles on Stream. And where do I see that? I don't know. Right, if I stop streaming...